In 2025, Ripple sold a record amount of XRP, and a lot of people are pointing to this as a massive headwind for XRP's price moving forward. The argument is simple. There is no way XRP can appreciate as long as Ripple is constantly selling into the market. So in this video, I want to break down my thoughts on that narrative and talk about whether or not I actually agree that Ripple's XRP sales are a long-term problem. Make sure you stick around for the entire video. You are not going to want to miss this. As always, thank you so much to everyone who supports this channel. If you enjoy these videos, please consider liking and subscribing. Those two simple actions genuinely help the channel more than you might realize. And if you're ever looking for a solid place to buy XRP, make sure to check out my favorite exchange linked down in the description. With that said, let's jump right into it. I want to start this video by saying that toward the end, we're going to take a look at the XRP price chart and a potential reversal that's forming right now. I actually think this price action lines up perfectly with a theory I've talked about before, that XRP might not form a classic V-bottom and that the bottom could already be behind us. But before we get to the charts, we need to talk about something that always grabs headlines: Ripple selling XRP. Recently, reports came out showing that Ripple sold more XRP in 2025 than in any previous year, and every time this happens, the same questions come up. How can XRP ever go up if Ripple is constantly dumping tokens? And how can Ripple claim to be bullish on XRP while selling it at the same time? Some people even take it a step further and ask, if Ripple believes XRP will be far more valuable in the future, why sell it at all? So let's start by putting this into proper context. First, there is no perfect way to distribute a digital asset.
In XRP's case, Ripple began with a large allocation and chose to distribute that XRP over time to participants in the ecosystem who actually wanted to own and use it. Other blockchains do this very differently. Take Bitcoin, for example. Bitcoin is distributed through mining. Miners are rewarded BTC for providing security to the network. And a lot of people look at that model and say, well, that's why Bitcoin performs so well. There's no sell pressure. But that simply isn't true. Bitcoin miners must sell Bitcoin. Running mining operations is expensive. Electricity, hardware, infrastructure, all of it costs money. To stay profitable, miners regularly sell BTC into the open market. When you actually compare the amount of Bitcoin miners sell versus the amount of XRP Ripple sells, the numbers are surprisingly similar. Ripple is not creating some unprecedented level of sell pressure. There is no successful blockchain network that exists without some form of ongoing sell pressure. Here's what excites me about XRP specifically. XRP has a fixed supply. It is a deflationary asset. No new XRP will ever be created. That means over time, Ripple's ability to sell XRP naturally declines. Eventually, that sell pressure fades away entirely. Ripple cannot sell XRP forever, and that's a massive point that often gets ignored. Now, let's address the bigger question. If Ripple believes XRP will be significantly more valuable in the future, why sell it at all? The answer is simple. Ripple is playing a completely different game than most crypto projects. Ripple is not chasing grassroots retail adoption. They don't believe that you and I buying coffee with XRP is what leads to global adoption. And honestly, I agree with them. Retail alone is not going to drive mass adoption of blockchain technology.
This technology is complex. It's infrastructure level. What's far more likely is that large financial institutions adopt it if it meaningfully improves how they move money. That's where Ripple has been focused. And this is where XRP sales start to make a lot more sense. Using their XRP war chest, Ripple has been acquiring systemically important infrastructure. They've purchased major custody providers with deep relationships across global banking. They acquired Medico, a key player in digital asset custody for large institutions. They acquired G-Treasury, which connects Ripple to more than 13,000 banks worldwide. They acquired Rail, which powers a significant portion of institutional B2B crypto payments via stablecoins. These acquisitions were funded in part by selling XRP. So the real question becomes this: did the value created by these acquisitions outweigh the short-term sell pressure caused by XRP sales? In my opinion, it's not even close. Owning infrastructure that connects to thousands of banks and controls custody rails for major institutions is exponentially more valuable than short-term market pressure. This is how you unlock trillions of dollars in long-term flows. This is short-term pain for long-term gain. Ripple's XRP war chest allowed them to survive bear markets, fight the SEC, expand their team, and acquire companies while others were laying people off or going bankrupt. Without that war chest, Ripple likely wouldn't exist in its current form today. There would be no Medico, no G-Treasury, no deep institutional ties. Every successful company in the world has sold equity at some point to fund growth. XRP is no different. If you believe in Ripple as a company, then you have to at least acknowledge the possibility that selling XRP is fueling far greater long-term value creation. That's the risk-reward calculation. And so far, Ripple has shown that they're making extremely calculated, intelligent moves.
They aren't chasing flashy hype projects. They're embedding themselves directly into the core plumbing of the global financial system. And that's why, today, when institutions talk about XRP, they're taking it seriously, as an asset, not just a ledger. That infrastructure simply didn't exist years ago. Now it does. So when people point to Ripple selling XRP as some overwhelming negative, I completely disagree. What I see is a company converting XRP into infrastructure that massively increases the probability of long-term adoption. And if XRP were underperforming every other asset in the market, maybe I'd feel differently. But it's not. Since 2020, XRP has been one of the best performing digital assets, despite lawsuits, FUD, and Ripple sales. Meanwhile, many projects that didn't sell tokens are now struggling, or dumping tokens through VCs behind the scenes anyway. Personally, I'd much rather Ripple be the one monetizing XRP and reinvesting into the ecosystem than have that supply dumped by short-term speculators with zero long-term interest. Now let's talk about price action. XRP is currently attempting a meaningful bounce. We're testing the top of a downtrend that has been in place since July 2025. Support has been holding well in the 1.80 to 2.0 range, and this is the critical zone XRP must reclaim to break the trend. In crypto, long-term grind down trends do not last forever. Bitcoin dominance is rolling over, macro trends are shifting, and XRP appears to be in the late stages of capitulation. Ironically, this is the point where sentiment feels the worst, and historically, that's when reversals are closest. It's not fun, it's frustrating. No one enjoys holding through periods like this, but more often than not, when it feels like nothing will ever change, that's when change is closest. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this update, and I'll see you in the next one.